I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China.
Who will win the trade war? A deep dive into global economics. All right, folks, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into one of the hottest topics in global economics, the trade war. Now, before you start yawning, let me assure you, this isn't just some boring lecture about tariffs and GDP numbers. No, no, no. This is about how these economic battles affect you, the regular consumer, and whether your avocado toast habit will survive another round of Trump tweets. And trust me, the stakes are much higher than just your brunch options. Setting the stage of war. Let's set the stage here. We've got the United States, under its ever-controversial Trump administration. Yes, he's back and tweeting like it's 2016, squaring off against heavyweights like China, Mexico, Canada, and, wait for it, the Panama Canal. Yep, even that little waterway is getting dragged into this mess. With global supply chains stretched thin, inflation lurking like a shadow, and markets reacting like a roller coaster with no brakes, this trade war is about more than just economics. It's about power, leverage, and the future of international relations. So grab your popcorn, or maybe a cup of coffee if you're still able to afford it, and let's break down who's winning, who's losing, and why none of us are safe from the chaos. The players. Who's involved? First things first, let's talk about the players. On one side, we've got Team USA, led by none other than Donald J. Trump himself. Love him or hate him, the guy knows how to stir the pot when it comes to international trade. His signature move? Tariffs.
I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary.
Lots and lots of tariffs. In his latest move, Trump has decided to double down on his America First agenda, targeting imports that he claims undermine U.S. industries and national security. Trump recently announced a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada, including a 10% tariff on Canadian energy and an additional 10% tariff on China. He invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, citing illegal immigration and fentanyl as major threats requiring economic action. The response? Markets tumbled, businesses scrambled, and world leaders started making emergency phone calls. In classic Trump fashion, he framed it as a move to protect American jobs and security, stating, "We need to protect Americans, and it is my duty as president to ensure the safety of all." Meanwhile, China, the world's second largest economy and America's biggest frenemy, isn't taking this lying down. They're sure to be hitting back with their own tariffs, flexing their manufacturing muscles, and forging stronger trade ties with other nations. They're also quietly increasing their influence over supply chains by investing in key industries and alternative markets, ensuring they have leverage in the long game. And then there's Mexico, with its exports making up a massive chunk of U.S. imports, everything from auto parts to avocados. This tariff was a serious gut punch. But rather than engaging in a prolonged economic slugfest, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, quickly struck a deal with Trump. According to Trump, President Sheinbaum agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers to the U.S.-Mexico border to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants. In return, the tariffs were paused for a 1-month negotiation period. This means there's still a chance the situation could escalate, but for now, Mexico is playing ball to avoid economic devastation. At the time of this video, Canada and Mexico have negotiated with Trump, resulting in a 30-day pause on the planned tariffs. And as for China, well, they have responded with their own.
This morning, the trade war heating up. China retaliating after the first of President Trump's tariffs kicked in at midnight. The U.S. imposing a 10% tax on all Chinese goods, aiming, the White House says, to stop the trade of narcotics in the U.S.
They're sending massive amounts of fentanyl.
That price hike, coming on top of pre-existing tariffs, could raise the cost of medications, with ingredients made in China including cancer drugs, antibiotics, and blood thinners, and affect a whole range of Chinese goods that Americans use, from groceries to computers and video games to popular brands like Shein and Temu. China quickly hitting back overnight, saying it's worked on controlling fentanyl, and China imposing its own tariffs on U.S. coal and natural gas, vehicles, and farm equipment. Beijing also targeting major American companies, opening an investigation into Google, restricting the company that owns fashion brands like Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and adding controls on materials that the tech industry depends on. Trump saying he'll continue the negotiation.
That was just an opening salvo.
While yesterday pulling back from the brink of tariffs with Canada and Mexico. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together, and moving ahead with a plan to beef up security on the northern border. Tariffs against Mexico also on hold after Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to deploy 10,000 troops to the U.S. border to address drug trafficking and migration.
The import-export tango. Who buys what? The United States, while boasting one of the largest economies on the planet, is also a huge importer. Did you know that roughly 80% of Mexico's exports find their way into the U.S., and about 75% of Canada's exports are destined for American markets? That's right. Our neighbors are practically our trading siblings, constantly swapping goods like oil, lumber, cars, and, yes, even avocados. Now, let's talk about China. While they might not top the charts in sheer volume compared to our neighbors, they dominate when it comes to high-tech gadgets and semiconductors. In short, the trade relationships are as intertwined as a reality television love triangle, complicated, messy, and impossible to untangle without a good accountant. Imagine it like this. If tariffs were a dance, the US, Canada, and Mexico would be doing a well-rehearsed cha-cha, while China throws in some unpredictable breakdancing moves. And poor Panama? It's stuck as the DJ, desperately trying to keep the beat going amid all the confusion. How does it affect the stock market? When Trump fires off a tariff announcement, investors freak out faster than someone realizing they left their phone at home. Why? Because tariffs disrupt supply chains, hike up costs for companies, and ultimately hurt profits. Even the mere threat of tariffs can send the stock market into a frenzy as investors try to predict which industries will be hit the hardest and which ones will manage to thrive despite the turbulence. Take semiconductors, for example. These little chips power everything from smartphones to cars. And guess where most of them come from? China. But thanks to tariffs, companies like Apple and Tesla are scrambling to find alternatives, or paying through the nose to keep importing Chinese tech. Either way, shareholders aren't happy, and neither are consumers. What about regular consumers? Speaking of higher prices, let's talk about how this whole trade war circus affects you, dear viewer. Remember those avocados I mentioned earlier? Well, thanks to tariffs on Mexican produce, your guac habit might soon cost an arm and a leg. And don't even get me started on Canadian lumber. If you were planning to build a deck this summer, good luck finding affordable wood now. Tariffs don't just raise prices, they also reduce choices. Say goodbye to cheap electronics from China and hello to overpriced knockoffs made domestically. Supporting local businesses sounds great in theory, but when your wallet takes a hit, it's hard to stay patriotic. Quality of life. Is it all going downhill? Are we better off living in a world where every country is throwing shade and tariffs at each other? Spoiler alert, probably not. Job security is taking a nosedive. While some industries see temporary gains, think steel producers benefiting from protective tariffs, others are hemorrhaging workers. Retailers are closing stores left and right, unable to compete with rising costs, and even healthcare is feeling the pinch as medical device manufacturers struggle with expensive components imported from overseas. And then there's inflation. Oh boy, inflation. When import costs rise, so do prices across the board, from your morning cup of coffee to that fancy smartphone you're eyeing. Tariffs might boost domestic manufacturing in theory, but in practice, they often just pass on the extra cost to you and me. So, who wins? Short answer, nobody. Long answer, it's like a three-ring circus where every act is a disaster, and the ringmaster is just yelling, "Make America great again." If you measure success by sheer stubbornness, then Trump definitely gets points for persistence. Meanwhile, China is playing the long game, and Mexico and Canada. They're just trying to keep their economies afloat while avoiding too much damage. At the end of the day, the trade war is a messy, complicated beast with no clear winner. But hey, at least we've got memes and a few good jokes to keep us entertained, right? Thanks for tuning in to Money Moves. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Until next time, stay financially savvy, and try not to stress too much about the state of the world.